My name is Rory Houlihan. I ran for U.S. Senate last spring, 2016, to stop the ticking time bomb so I could put our economy in track for a bright new day instead of all things ending. Well, I lost the election and not running, but the ticking time bombs are still here. So, if not more so, let me educate you on the ticking time bombs and give you the rest of the story. Part 17D, the Second Amendment, 4 of 7 now. May 28th, 1776. For God's sake, declare the colonies independent at once and save us from ruin. John Page to Thomas Jefferson. June 28th, 1776. First draft of the Declaration of Independence was introduced to the Continental Congress. Debate starts on Monday, July 1st, 1776. Jefferson withers under such scrutiny, but Jefferson will always be remembered as the man that wrote the Declaration of Independence. Folks, sometimes you have to take a beating to prevail. Good, bad, or indifferent. You must stand for something or you stand for nothing. That is what leadership is. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Thomas Jefferson. Uh, July 30th, 1776. War with the Cherokee Nation soon breaks out afterwards as the Cherokee sided with Britain. Why people with a capital P is used. That war hardens the hearts of colonialists against the Cherokee and the Indian nations from then on. 1779. Thomas Jefferson was elected governor of Virginia. His term was to be from 1779 to 1781, 2 years only. 1780. The capital of Virginia moves to Richmond, which is seen as more defensible. December 29th, 1780. Benedict Arnold changes sides and becomes a traitor. Slow and often wrong intelligence sows the seeds of disgust in the South when volunteer militiamen are called on to find no enemy in place. This leads to slow reactions by both the governors in the South and the Southern militias. Volunteer means fighting is on their time. Work to feed still needs to happen. January 1st, 1781, reports of a British invasion is ignored for 2 days by Thomas Jefferson. January 4th, order to summon up the militia is placed. January 5th, 1781, British troops move on Richmond. British arrive at 1 p.m. 10 minutes later, all the white folks have fled to Beacon Quarters Branch, north of Richmond, to join the militia. Virginia government moves to Charlottesville. The war strain kills another of Jefferson's children, Lucy Elizabeth. Do you remember what killed one of your kids? He most definitely did. Legislature had tried to create a bill to draft folks into the state's militia, but when heard, rioting in Charlottesville occurs and no bill is passed. For this, there is a reason why the Second Amendment starts off a well-regulated militia. That was to cure governors' need to be able to draft and train folks well in advance of an invasion. Jefferson and other Southern states' governors were routed because legislatures across the South didn't allow them to draft and train an army. They had no tools in the toolbox to defend our country. This is the main reason we have the Second Amendment. Every state in the United States has a National Guard unit, which governors can call up for this reason. Jefferson writes to Washington on January 28, 1781, for assistance. June 2nd, 1781, Cornwallis orders Tarleton and his cavalry to pursue the Virginia government to Charlottesville. Tarleton rides fast. June 3rd, Jack Gillette sees them riding by and rides through the thickets to warn Thomas Jefferson and the Virginia government. Arrives just before dawn at Monticello. The British arrive at noon, June 4th. Toast the king to King George. So he had a birthday with Jefferson's best wines and go on to Charlottesville. On the way, they burn estates, Thomas Jefferson's other estates too. Uh, Jack Gillette goes on to warn the rest of the Virginia government. At Charlottesville, the rest of the government flees to Stanton and reforms at Trinity Church. June 12th, awards Gillette for his heroism by giving him a brace of pistols and a sword as tokens of their gratitude. Then goes after Jefferson for the debacle. Those who are loyal point out these very legislators never gave Jefferson the ability to draft and train an army, and they are the ones that are responsible for the debacle. Uh, a soil that Jefferson never loses. Again, why the first and controlling thought in the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia and shall not be infringed. The most of today's historians underplay the role Benedict Arnold had, but Benedict Arnold knew the fatal flaws in the state the militia defense plan. Time. In the era of the horse, the use of cavalry gave very little time for South's militias to mount a defense. The other fatal flaw was governors' inability to draft and train a militia-based army before our country needed to be defended. The idea of a volunteer army was the cheapest way to defend our poor and weak countries, states' governments, by sliding off the cost of arming and feeding to those that fought, proved to be penny-wise and taken over foolish. All armies take time and training to be able to work properly. To mount a proper defense, you must have, first, superior numbers. Second, you have to have a control over the ground. So you have to be in place. And finally, third, you have to have a planned block and counterattack. All this takes time to do. So you can be able to defend our country properly. You have a good and blessed day. The end.